So the questions, I'll just summarise them very, very briefly, because we're taking them in batches of 3. SNP, there's a lot of SNP people, yes. What is it that Labour makes? What's the strategy? How do we contact voters? Also, why should we trust the incumbent Labour Party in Scotland, which is a very good, very valid question. And also the hostility that we're receiving and the lack of dialogue. What do we do to try and improve that and try and get some kind of dialogue between the hierarchy of the party and the ordinary members who may not agree with their views? So
some civilised,
yes.
something that's about being a civilised debate.
Tommy, I'm going to hit you with it first if you answer any of the questions that you feel are on me.
Right, I'll do my best. Here's the difficulty, I think, is that, as I've said, I think the Yes campaign is much broader than just a nationalist campaign. But the people who are against us are trying to caricature it as just a nationalist campaign. And in fact, this isn't just people in Better Together. This is, the BBC. This is Severin Carroll, who writes for The Guardian, a liberal newspaper. Right? He cannot write a piece about this debate and refer to the Yes campaign. He always refers to the SNP-led Yes campaign, or the nationalists, or whatever. He just cannot understand that there could be people who be voting Yes who don't support the SNP. They cannot understand that it's perfectly possible to be a Labour Party supporter and to continue to be a Labour Party supporter and to vote Yes. That is not a contradiction in terms that's entirely possible. But, so they're trying to caricature the campaign on the one hand, and then you have the dilemma that because it's a majority government, and because this is the Scottish Government putting forward a proposition, all of the spokespeople for the government, de facto, are going to be SNP. So what we need to do, and I agree with you, is to get more people in the next 2 months on the box and, in the papers and being spokespeople for the campaign who deliberately are not connected with the SNP, and that's beginning to happen. So you're getting more people coming through, like the Elaine C. Smiths of this world and people like that, people who don't have a political connection, don't have an SNP connection. In terms of what do we do about contacting Labour Party members, and other people mentioned it as well. I don't know, to be honest. It's been a while since I concluded my 20 years in the Labour Party. But I get the impression, I might be wrong, but I get the impression that the Labour Party membership, the actual people who carry cards, is probably smaller and more moribund than it's ever been. And certainly this flourishing, particularly of young people who get involved in this campaign, the Labour Party is just not on their radar. So maybe, there might be merit in trying to guilt trip various people to say, well, at least we should have a debate in this, can we get both sides to have a debate for Labour Party members? But I think probably the better way is actually to take the leaflets that you have and other stuff like that and just go out en masse in Labour voting areas, because at the end of the day, that way you'll hit some people who are party members, or the few who are, but also you'll be hitting the Labour supporters, and it seems to me that they are key. Because you talk about trust, I'm the wrong person to ask. I wouldn't trust Joanna Lamont as far as I could throw it, but I cannot see myself ever being a member again of this Labour Party, but I can see myself being a member of a Labour Party if it were reformed and if someone, and had a bit of a change of personnel, shall we say. So,
Gary? Yeah, I'm just going to pick on a couple of things. I want you to go back to the first question about costs and stuff like that. It's just to say we already pay for the NHS, we already pay for our public services. Scotland does not get kept by England. I think that was an early tactic that will actually, without us, you'll sink because you can't afford to live, and that's been proved to be wrong. Can I also say we pay MPs at the moment to go to Westminster, Scottish MPs, 4 days a week. Now, how can they be representing the views and the needs of people? And what about the cost of that? And anybody that thinks the machinery of Westminster doesn't have a huge cost is kidding themselves on. So there are a lot of costs that we will not have to spend if we do get independent, rather than putting people, the House of Lords. My personal bugbear is the royal family, but I'll not get into that. So there are kind of
tax.
Yes, well, it would be one place that
she's the Queen of Scots. That's the way it works.
Well, yes.
Everybody has varying views.
Yes, which is why I can imagine. I think the issue about trust, and Joanne, yes, absolutely, and people will just have to question that as it comes and deal with the people that have kind of done that. I think that's going to be true for the Labour Party. The issue that you mentioned about kind of how the local CLPs treat people, one of the reasons I kind of came out and kind of did that, made a stand, was to try and encourage other people, because I know I'm not the only one that feels like that. And you can either just kind of shut up and go along with it, which is what I did for a while, or kind of say no, enough is enough. I think the tactic was initially to attack, and the tactic now is to just say they're all crackpots, they're just a minority, just ignore them. Who are they anyway? They're not important. And I'm not too sure how you can counter that, apart from just saying this is what I believe, and I am a member of the Labour Party. I was also taken off the kind of mail-in lists for my CLP. Interestingly enough, I was taken off the Better Together mailing list, but I seem to have been rejoined, but I think they've made a mistake, so I've started to get that stuff through again from them, which is quite ironic. Yes, I mean, the hostility is kind of there, but I mean, I worked in the NHS for over 14 years, representing people who are being bullied by management and stuff like that, so I'm quite well used to being insulted and having to face hostility. I don't think there's a way around it other than people just saying this is what I believe and this is what I'm going to do, and like it or lump it, and then you will get attacked. But I think after we get independent, and I do think we do, those people will have to turn tail and think, well, actually the Scottish public have supported this, so we now will have to try and win back their trust. How they're going to do it, I don't know.
Okay, thank you very much. Debbie?
Well, hostility I'll take first, but I reckon my answer probably answered most of those questions. My CLP, obviously not mailing me. I actually did ask why they weren't mailing me. I was told I wasn't allowed to come until after the end of the referendum. Isn't just the first thing I've had councillors in my local area send me pretty bad verbal abuse. I've been told they're going to rip my Labour card up, they're going to come up to my door and tell me how I should be acting because I'm acting out with what the party states. To be honest, I'm a trade unionist, so my skin's a lot thicker than that. I'm used to bullies and I'm used to dealing with them. As for coming out and he's wanting us to get that out there, I don't know who he wants to get it out there with, because none of the papers support independence, so won't take any of our stories for anything. Not that I've tried, I haven't tried, but when I have approached the Labour Party about it, because they generally run quite a lot of stories on bullying from the Nats to the Better Getters campaign. And each time I see one, I ask them again, would you like my story about being bullied by my own kind and why it's affecting both sides of the Labour? They don't exist. And we never really were Labour members anyway, and we're basically Nats in disguise. As for contacting members and getting them out there and dealing with things and possibly voting yes, obviously through trade union meetings I do speak with a lot of Labour members. We're all Labour members in the background the majority of the time at conference, and I would take to say on their detriment there is a lot of us that just maybe a wee bit too scared to come out as being something that they shouldn't be, which is a yes. Obviously policy conference, the Labour Party was quite interesting this year. We went up and I lasted half a day. It was due to the fact that they didn't actually tell me anything interesting. All I got was the Nats said this and we did that, and the Nats said this and we did that. And what are the Nats saying? Oh yeah, it's them that's going to do that to you. But I've lost the Labour Party. The Labour Party's got lost. It doesn't know who it is anymore. It definitely isn't a Labour Party. And its activists are all lost, and there's not that many of them anymore. They are reducing steadily. The party membership is actually not a secret that it's went down in numbers. It is, if you look it up, it has massively declined in numbers. So gaining trust with Joanne Lamont and everything, I think, is beyond. I think she's made her bed and she's going to have to lie in it now. I think if she really wanted what possibly could happen, then she would have had to state that at the time. And I reckon if it does happen and we do positively, hopefully, and I'm praying to the universe and all sorts, when it does happen, she has made her bed and she will need to lie in it. But I do reckon she'll probably slot into England somewhere in one of their wee elections, because that tends to what happens. She'll probably get a job. She's a good girl. Up here, I reckon there will be a realignment, as I've said. So there's a lot of good people within the
I
Labour
don't
Party.
actually know what it is that Joanne Lamont has done. What is it?
She's only because she's supported Better Together. So if we gain a yes, this is not about her doing anything. This is if we gain a yes and the Labour Party realigns, maybe people that are within the Labour Party wouldn't trust her to run the Labour Party within Scotland because she was backing us to stay within the Union. That's what kind of the question was round about. So I don't think it could happen. I don't think that could happen. I don't think she will stay anyway. I think she fully understands what would happen if it's a yes. But people forget there's a lot of people within the Labour Party that are excellent at their jobs. They have amazing talents, and they have amazing talents from all rounds. I mean, there's people from all areas. If you think of a trade union and you think of all the areas that we work within, then you've got obviously all the different areas and all the different skills. These politicians in the background still have these skills. I promote them a lot. I know things were better together, but Neil Finlay is an excellent socialist guy. He really is when you speak to him. He has utmostly the goodness of his heart. Obviously he's following what the party says, and that's not running well for him. But remember, there's people in the background that you're not seeing, and they can come forward and do things. Not going to be me, just to state there. And I'll leave it at that. But really, you're not going to get our stories coming forward because papers will not promote
There's still
us.
good socialists there, though.
There's very good socialists within the Labour Party.
If I can take the gentleman over here first, but in terms of process, like Tommy, I haven't been to a Labour Party meeting since 2003. I don't think there's any branch meetings take place in my area. I get invited still to the constituency meetings. I've never been, but I think the branches are now bypassed and everything goes to the constituency. I think that those that attend are generally councillors and the MP, MSP, and one or two others in the committee. Is it worthwhile having a discussion in that forum? I'm not sure. Maybe I would have had it a bit earlier and built up a bit further steam. It might have been, but I question whether it's worth our time and efforts to do that now. In terms of your idea of targeting Labour voters and canvassing them, again, I'm not quite sure if it would be worthwhile, because I was involved in a canvass here not so long ago with the Radical Independence campaign. We were knocking on doors in the Pilton area and canvassing support. I wasn't sure what was going to happen to the results, but I found out later that they're all fed in. Whoever it is that does the canvass feeds the same system it's the same computer-based system that's all fed into a central computer database, and from that they'll know who to go to in the next canvass and then in the final canvass. So all that work is worthwhile, irrespective of whether they're Labour voters or not, and I don't know who the Labour voters are, and I don't think many other people do either. In terms of the poor Joanne, who's come in for some criticism, correctly, I think that irrespective of whether there's a yes or a no vote, she's a dead duck. I mean, I honestly do not think that she'll survive, simply because, I was watching 2 YouTube films of her trying to explain what devolution proposals were coming out, and I was cringing with embarrassment. I think that there are certain people who are lined up to take her place. Now, don't count your chickens here, because one of them's Jim Murphy that's been rumoured. The man that's going to move her out. He's not liked at Westminster by Miliband, and a sideways move as leader of Labour in Scotland is one thing that is a possibility. But if there's a yes vote, listen, there'll be many Labour MSPs as MPs as are at Westminster just now. Every single one of them will be trying to get up here to get the seats. They'll be elbowing everybody out of the way, and the whole shadow cabinet that we've got just now in Scotland will be changed. So I don't honestly think we need to concern ourselves too much about that. I'm more concerned about what's to follow than what's there. I've experienced that degree of hostility, traitor, turncoat, etc. It's pussycat stuff. Really, I'm not too worried about it. It's what you would expect. I've been certainly called a lot worse in the trade union movement, so it doesn't bother me in that sense about the hostility. Drawing it to people's attention, I think our best bet. I know people are very, it's an age thing as well as everything else. But the social media to me is the best way that this campaign is getting its message across. There was a video made, and I was told that they were hoping to get 1 million people viewing that. 1 million on social media. It's not on mainstream television. They're saying nobody's watching programmes on mainstream television that are serious. There will be the discussion programme certainly, but the number of people watching them is nothing compared to what's going on social media. So I think that's one of the great successes of this. Well, there's two successes. One is the meetings all over Scotland, but the other is this network that's going on there. It's like a Scottish Spring going on here in the social media, and that to me is more encouraging, and that's why we're able to take on the whole establishment.
Thank you very much. Now, at this point, what I'm going to ask you all for is a round of applause and thanks to Gary, who has to leave just now. So we'd like to thank him very much for his contribution this evening.